One-on-one. Financing needs to bridge the gap. Herman Marais, Managing Partner and Co-founder at EXEO Capital, in conversation with Godfrey Mutizwa, Editor-in-Chief at CNBC Africa.
Hello and welcome once again. My name is Godfrey Mutizwa. Now, in this conversation titled Financing Needs to Bridge the Gap, we will explore actionable strategies to address the challenges that continue to confront higher education and shine the spotlight on funding models as well as technical training ranging from income-sharing agreements to public-private partnerships and education bonds. We'll also tackle how African governments, development finance institutions, and private capital can better collaborate to build sustainable, scalable education funding systems that unlock opportunities for millions of learners. Joining me for this discussion is Herman Marais. He's a managing partner and co-founder of EXEO Capital. Herman, thank you for your time. I want perhaps right at the outset to get an understanding from yourself, your view in terms of whether we have enough capital to fund education or we need to find the capital.
Godfrey, good day to you as well. You know, there are some big numbers floating around. Some estimates would tell you that the African continent needs upwards of $100 billion to close, just in higher education, to close the funding gap between now and 2030 to address the youthful population's higher education requirements. But that gives one an indication of the scope of the funding requirement. We can find the capital. The capital is out there. It's resident in the fiscus of the countries on the continents. It's available among the development finance institutions. It's available from the private sector locally and globally. What we're not doing is we're not prioritizing the mobilization of that capital, and we're not prioritizing putting that capital to work through properly governed institutional arrangements with proper strategies behind them. We're neglecting and we're failing the youth of Africa.
So I want to come up and follow up with you on who needs to do what. But before we get there, what about this other view that of that money that is available, it's actually not being efficiently used? I've come across numbers suggesting that on a per capita basis, South Africa, for instance, spends more on education than the likes of Germany or even the United States.
That is unfortunately the case. I'm not a specialist in K-12 school education, but from the public evidence available and also from our own work in the higher education systems, I think that is very true. We suffer from a lack of a rigorous management of performance, of outcomes, and therefore we don't get the social return on the capital already invested. We can do a lot better, I believe.
Yeah. So let's talk about what we should do then to be able, number one, to use the capital that's available efficiently and then attract the other capital that we need. As you say, it's quite a lot of money. $100 billion in how many years? In 5 years is quite a lot of money. From the government side, what do you see being required in order to create the environment or indeed the structures that will enable private capital to flow in?
Godfrey, for me, the key thing is that we need to become more strategic. You know, again, just taking higher education, the institutional structures of higher education are among the oldest organizational structures on earth. But we've moved on in times, and the needs of our countries, the skills needs of our countries have obviously evolved and are continuously evolving. As a country and as countries in Africa, we need to become more strategic about what our critical skills requirements are. And we need to make sure that both our available public sector capital, as well as our private sector capital that can be mobilized, really address the critical skills requirements of our economies.
Yeah.
Here in South Africa, we know we need to get our economy to grow. It's been in the doldrums now for more than 10 years. One of the most critical ingredients of getting the economy to fire on more cylinders is to address the skills gaps. But we are spending too much budget and funding on skills that are not necessarily in the priority areas for what the economy needs. We need, for the next couple of years, we need more technicians, we need more engineers, we need more scientists, we need more data scientists. We need fewer graduates and people with diplomas in other disciplines. So that strategic prioritization is a key factor that I would highlight, Godfrey.
Yeah. In the policy area, though, from a government perspective, what would you have changed?
I think it's this aspect of prioritizing our spend on the critical skills requirements.
Okay.
That for me is number one, and ensuring that the money is well spent.
Yeah, efficiently. Very important. And we know this is not the case in many of the African countries. But what kind of capital do we need here, Herman? And I'm asking the question because here in South Africa, of course, we've got very good examples of private money that's been put into higher education. And I can think of the likes of Curo, I can think of Advertech. And I'm asking the question, is it just public money that we should be looking at when we're trying to talk about funding for higher education? Or can private capital as well work just as well in this space?
No, indeed, Godfrey, the examples that you mentioned are there. EXEO Capital is a firm. The firm that I represent is a investor and key shareholder in a private higher education platform that already serves more than 20,000 students in South Africa. The private system, is actually growing quite rapidly, and it's currently serving close to 20% of the students in the higher education system in total. So it's a noteworthy contributor to the delivery of education in the country, and that growth is also taking place in the K-12 system, the school system.
Yeah.
So that illustrates very well that there's a role for private capital and also a role for private enterprise.
Yeah.
The public system, as it is configured today in South Africa, by and large, only has the infrastructure and the space available to address about 50% of the students, post-school students, that are eligible for tertiary studies annually.
Sure.
So that leaves a huge gap for the private capital and private enterprise to fulfill responsibly and to contribute to the delivery of those critical skills requirements of the economy.
Yeah.
For the private sector to fund that development, it's a blend of for-profit capital, but there's also a role for more blended capital, including so-called impact investment and other forms of concessionary capital. Fortunately, education is an investment that can generate both risk-adjusted financial returns, but as we know, it is one of the best social investments that any private investor can make. So there's a place for impact investors as well.
Yeah, I'd go so far as to say it's the most important investment that any institution, be it government, organization, etc., can make, because we know the difference that it can make. But can we work together? Can we bring the private sector and the governments to work together? Are there perhaps any models that we could look to, that we can talk about, that could be perhaps used to try to bring the two, or dare I say, three or any other parties that are interested in the space?
I certainly think so, Godfrey. There are a couple of examples one can think about. Last year, the group that we have invested in as EXEO Capital, called NetEd, with Eduvos as the most prominent brand, we convened a think tank of both corporate and public sector role players to address this very aspect of how can the public and private sectors work together better to address this, the more rapid and more efficient servicing of the skills gaps in our country. And a couple of examples came to the fore. As you know, the public sector system has a student financing system, NSFAS. There's nothing similar for the private sector students. So we need to think innovatively of how can we extend that form of student support to the thousands of students that are now also studying at private higher education institutions. We can also think creatively about adjusting our funding models for education. In several countries in the rest of the world, so-called income recourse systems have been instituted, whereby students get their studies funded through scholarships funded by the state. But that capital outlay is recovered later as they start to earn income. We haven't as yet implemented that in South Africa. So that would be clearly also a system that can be rolled out across both the public and private sectors. So these are just two examples. There are many others through which public and private sector can work together better. We spoke at the start of this conversation about becoming more strategic about prioritizing the critical skills needs of our economy. Now, nothing stands in the way, in principle, of the public system saying the economy needs X number of engineers or technicians in particular disciplines. The public system is not able to deliver all of those. Can you, as private sector, assist? And let's structure a targeted agreement that can deliver those skills over a period of 5 or 6 years. So I think the opportunities are many. We just need to become a bit more organized in how we address these priorities.
Are these things that you have been able to raise in any way, Herman? Have you gotten any inkling at all whether there is an appetite on the part of government to listen and to try to arrive at common solutions? And I speak because the other day, the new Minister of Higher Education was talking about rethinking the whole approach to higher education and making sure that we're able to connect the skills that are required by industry to the school system.
If I think back to the conversations we had at our think tank between public and private sector participants last year, Godfrey, I would say the willingness and the attitude is there to rethink and to transform where necessary and to adopt innovation. But what I would say is that we as South Africans are good at talking, but we're a bit slow on the implementation side. So we need to become a bit more urgent and push up the tempo of introducing these kinds of reforms.
As a final point, would you have any thoughts, pointers as to how the public sector could best use the resources that he has to improve the funding that we have available for students post higher education?
I may sound like a stuck soundtrack, but I would again point to the need for strategic prioritization of what the economy really needs,
Yeah.
and to make sure that we target the available funding at those skills requirements instead of spreading the available funding too widely. And secondly, um, addressing the opportunities for these public-private partnerships and cooperation that you've referred to. I think those are two key levers we can pull. The public sector can pull.
Absolutely, absolutely. I really like your idea about the government going to the private sector and saying, hello, we know we are constrained, but we need 50,000 engineers. Please, can we work out a structure that enables us to be able to get them and put them into the economy for greater use? Herman, thank you for your time and for your insights today. That's Herman Marais. He is the managing partner and co-founder of EXEO Capital. And that's it for this segment, where we were trying to look at ways in which to finance the financing gap that's required for higher education. From all of us here, for now, thank you and goodbye.